If I had to make a list about the state of superhero movies and TV shows in the late 2010s and early 2020s, I would put on that list that there is a bloat of what if Superman was evil trope. From Brightburn to The Boys to the Injustice games, no one seems to want to do Superman as he really is these days. However, Invincible is one of the better and more unique takes on this trope. First season of the show was a hit and led to iconic memes and even Omni-Man being added to Mortal Kombat. But what about the second season? Other than the very beginning of the first episode, not many scenes have made the rounds on the more normie part of the internet. The memes are starting to appear on my phone again, but it's still just like season 1 stuff mostly. The chatter is there, and maybe people are just starting to watch it, but it feels like the talk is less than the first season. Well, I decided to watch the first part of season 2 and see if maybe I can figure out why. So let's talk about it. So to start this review slash discussion, let me just say I did like the first season of Invincible. I have not read the comics, so I'm just judging the story presented by the show. The first season I would rate as a 7 out of 10. I would have given it an 8 out of 10 if it wasn't for fucking Amber. She was just awful. And I absolutely wanted her out of the show and to not be dating Mark. I was more interested in him dating like Eve, even though I wasn't that much of a fan of her too. But she was a better character. She had a nice back and forth with Mark. They could have had an interesting relationship. That her wanting to save nature and him wanting to save people, and some of the collidings they could do, like hero philosophy. It could have been something. And it's not just Amber that made me lower my score. I thought there were some discrepancies and stupid choices made. Like Eve's powers. One minute, she can conjure anything and make it real and tangible, and the next, she's like a pink ripoff Green Lantern. It seems like she can do just about anything the scene needs her to be able to do. I just wanted to be made clear what her abilities are and what are her limits. In her defense, I didn't watch the Adam Eve prequel special thing that might have explained it, but it should really be restated in the show. You know, the main show, about what those are. I did like the universe that was being built, but I thought they had like too many side stories they were trying to interconnect. None of them were bad stories, and it wasn't too complicated to follow what was going on, but it was just a lot. The main story is about Mark and his family, and that is what I wanted to see. I didn't care about the robot guy, the twins, or the Guardians. I was always looking forward to those scenes just being over so we could go back to Mark and Omni-Man. Now what about Season 2, I hear no one asking? Well, in favor of staying spoiler-free as long as I can, my overall feeling for the show so far is that it's good. Not as good as the first season, and I still have issues with some things, but I will be watching the second half. Okay, so now for the light, not too story-heavy spoilers. First thing of note is that Amber is a lot more downplayed so far. She's not as heavily involved in the first 4 episodes, and even goes, yeah, you're a fucking superhero. You're saving people. I am not the most important girl in the world. This was definitely a step in the right direction for me. I was happy to see her be more understanding and supportive of Mark with him being a hero. This makes Mark being like so in love with her more acceptable. His simping and feeling bad about leaving her to do his hero work doesn't make you like feel as cringe and make you want to shout at the TV, "That bitch doesn't deserve it," and to move on. It's better. The next thing to note about the season so far is there's still a lot of side stories playing out, and minor threats being set up and established to take care of later, before the Viltrumite invasion, or potentially flip to help with the invasion, whatever. It all picks up a month after the end of the last season, and not much has changed with the side characters. Just kind of all picks up right where it left off, as if nothing really happened off screen. I still think there's a little too much of these stories, but it feels less so far, and I appreciate that. I still personally don't care about the side characters that much, but if you did find all of that interesting in the last season, I don't think you'll be disappointed with what they have done so far. Although this half feels like kind of setting up the key characters to have some more serious shit go down in the next half. Don't go thinking, there a lot happens with them. Actually, that kind of goes for the entire season so far. These 4 episodes mostly deal with the emotional toll everyone feels after Mark and Omni-Man's fight, as well as setting up the villains and getting characters in certain places, building up some relationships, and a little bit of character development. Then, episode 4, a few hammers finally fall, and the audience kind of learns, what the next half of the season might be, and some major plot points do happen. Overall, I feel these 4 episodes were just like a little slow. I think they could have been condensed to 2 and still have a lot of development happen. Then, you could have another 2 where some more major plot points go on, and then go to your second half. And speaking of episode 4, actually, just a side step back there. Episode 4 is pretty much the only episode that has Omni-Man. They show him in flashbacks or recordings, and he is in the first few minutes of episode 1, but for the most part, Omni-Man is barely in the season, so if you were looking forward to seeing him fly around and killing stuff, hearing J.K. Simmons do a great job voicing him, then I am sorry to disappoint you, but this season is very much about Mark and his mom dealing with the fallout of learning who Omni-Man really was. And the second major story is Eve dealing with her wanting to save environment, all that, having a backlash, and her kind of being pulled more towards fighting villains again. On the note of villains, I have to say I don't really find myself caring about Angstrom. He's a pacifist that has the power to travel between dimensions, and he wants to merge minds with all of his variants to gain their knowledge. But the merging process goes wrong when Mark shows up, and he gets infected by the mind of an Angstrom who hates Invincible. So now he wants revenge on Mark, and I just don't really care. I think my not caring for Angstrom mostly has to do with being absolutely done and uninterested in multiverses, dimensional swapping, and all that bullshit. There's just too much of that crap going on right now, especially with the MCU, and I just don't want it anymore. I do appreciate they tried to set some limits to his powers, but I'm not sure how well those rules were really followed later. So my not caring has nothing really to do with the character of Angstrom personally. I just don't care about his powers mostly. And while they were setting him up with all his dimensional bullshit, they only show one variant of Angstrom that hates Mark. But if Mark becoming evil is common in a lot of dimensions, then surely there would be more than one Angstrom out for revenge. They could have made a point that there's more of them that hate Mark than there are of pacifist Angstroms. Or maybe they could have highlighted that this Mark in the main dimension is special because he didn't turn into a baddie. There are a couple of other plot twists and villains introduced, and you might be able to guess if you read the comics about who they are, but I don't want to spoil that in this video if any of you are still thinking about watching. So, let's move on to a couple of returning villains / morally gray characters, or however you want to describe the Mauler Twins. And in this part, I will be spoiling them a lot, so you have been warned. The Mauler Twins are back, and they are used as the smart people and inventors, for the story. That's about it. This season just gets them out of jail, and you have an explosion happen, and only one of the twins make it. So then he clones himself again, but he's still scarred from the explosion, so you can tell who the original is. So you start to see an interesting dynamic form in the original treating the clone as a slave. I was like, all right, I like this change. We can explore this. Maybe the clone eventually turns good and ends up helping save the Earth as a fuck you to the original or something. It'd be interesting to see the clone deal with all this like psychological issues of him knowing he's a clone and starting to want to betray the original. But that doesn't happen. Almost immediately, the clone poisons the original Mauler and is going to clone him again, and so now the twins are just back to normal as always and just out of jail. They just like do a reset and back to normal, and now they're waiting off screen to be the only people smart enough to make a MacGuffin that the heroes will need later. Everybody in the show got development but them. It just seems odd. Just use them to be the science solution people waiting in the wings, and that they like always have to be all right. The other thing that hasn't changed about this show is Mark still gets his ass beat all the time. He goes, "Oh, I'm stronger now," and he wants to get back out there fighting villains, who just keeps getting beat to near death. And everyone goes, "Oh wow, you did great, you're amazing, good job, you saved the day." But all he did was show up, get his ass kicked, and then some bullshit happens and the villain just leaves. Or he barely wins. Then, because of Voltron blood or whatever, he's fine, and only has like a black eye a couple minutes later. Mark just fucking sucks at fighting, and the being invincible so he can take a hit thing is just getting old. The violence and gore is what people like, along with the story, but the types of injuries people are surviving in these 4 episodes are just starting to get ridiculous. I want some more consequences to a fight, and not next day healing bullshit that fixes everyone. Well, that's pretty much the end of my issues with the show without getting into heavy spoilers. Overall, I'll give the season like a 6.5 out of 10. It's not as good as the first, but pretty close to even. There are some good improvements, but there are also new issues that kind of cancel each other out, make me not want to quite give it the little bit higher score or fully match it. But it's also just like half a season, so the score could increase, and they left the story off to have some good things happen. I am interested where the main story goes, so I will continue watching it. But why does it feel like the hype for the season is not quite there? Based on the Rotten Tomatoes, the critics and the audience still love the show. Even though Rotten Tomatoes has a lot of problems as a site, this still tells me that people are watching. And I don't see much negativity for it. I see people memeing pretty much everything Omni-Man was in, but like nothing about the other characters or episodes. So is the show's lack of Omni-Man making it be talked about less? Could the smoke from the dumpster fire that is the Marvels and Doctor Who be blocking it all? Maybe there's just so much other content happening right now that people are like watching Invincible but not wanting to talk about it. They want to talk about the other stuff. I think it's a little bit of compounding of all of this, and that led to a smaller splash on the internet while it is still being watched and enjoyed by people. There will probably be a delayed increase of traction as movies slow down, other shows finish out, but the initial reaction for the immediate drop of the episodes has been lackluster for sure. Too bad, since it's a streaming show, we will never get to see the true views and ratings, and I will never get a clear answer. But let me know what you think about the show and why you think no one is talking about it in the comments below. Also, what do you want me to review next? I'm open to anything. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching this long, and see you later. Bye.